Alright, so we're going to continue Hilchos Niddah, Siman Tzavi. This is the Siman that deals with Ksomim, staining. So we've already discussed the main drush of Chazal in the Gemara, that it says Basar, her flesh, which indicates that the diuk in the word, that there needs to be a hargasha for a woman to be tmeya, the raisa. It needs to come through her body for her to feel that it's coming through. Then she's Tmeya Deraisa. In other words, she actually has to have felt the dam coming out. Discovering blood in itself without having any sensation would still render her Tmeya, but Midirabanan. So we're not going to review the whole Mahalach, in other words, all the steps and how they arrive in that and what exactly that means. For our purposes, we learn now about Ksomim. Ksomim is not the period, it's not the vesset that she's having necessarily, even though initially in the very first days it could be that she will stain. But we're talking about something that is not ordinary, something that happens not during her period. She sees a stain. So even though a stain is blood, from what we can tell, and as we will eventually learn, the various requirements for stain to metame her includes the right coloration, the right size, the right location, and so forth. Still, it's important that we keep in mind that as a result of this drasha in Chazal of Vivesora, Ksomim is the Rabbanan, as opposed to seeing blood even without hargasha, but seeing that blood when she sticks in an aid inside of her body, it is as though she would have felt it. In other words, we assume she could have felt it, she just didn't realize it. So there's a big difference as to where the actual blood is found versus stains. Because blood, even if she does not feel it coming out, but it's inside of her, if she sticks something in her, she examines herself, it's still, of course, going to be the regular dam, no question whatsoever. Of course, we discussed already injuries and the like, which are foundations for certain lenience. They can't serve as lenience cases. But Ksomim is different. And we have to understand that the area of Ksomim is quite unique, not only because it happens, in all kinds of situations, whether a woman is exercising or change of weather or perhaps traveling, or perhaps taking medication. Not only does it happen in various kinds of situations, it does present a problem. We need to keep that in mind. A woman that stains a lot could have a hard time being clean for her husband. So it's important to remember that since it's the Rabbanan, it would be a good idea for one to know the halachas, or to, of course, consult a Rav. And usually there is a need, you don't want to resolve as to if a particular kesem makes the woman tameh or tahar. Tmei or tahara, because even though it's very possible that the dam is coming from within her body, still, if it does not have the requirements that are outlined in Halachos of Ksomim, she would still be tahara. In other words, even though, and this is an interesting chiddush, and it's a machlokes, even though one knows for certain that this dam came from her body, there are some opinions that hold that if the kesem does not have the shear, does not have, for example, the size, the kigris and oil that we talked about, she will still be tahara. The Kreisi Plesi, however, says that when the woman knows for sure that it came from her body, then you don't have the advantage of being toile, of attributing it to a ma'acholet, to a laus. Because one of the reasons we are lenient with Ksomim in general is not just because they're the Rabbanan. It's because it is possible that it came from another source, not the body. That source being a louse. Even though today we have better hygiene and we don't assume it was a bug, but we have that heter. The gzer of the Chachomim on Ksomim was only if it meets certain conditions. If it is possible to attribute it to anything else, then of course we're going to rely on that. We don't want unnecessarily to make a woman tmeya, to go back to the mikveh, to be away from her husband, unless for sure, she's tmeya, but just because there is a suffix, So if it's a suffix deraisa, it's one thing. Here we're dealing with more of a suffix derabanan. Unless we're talking about an internal exam, as we explained last time, which is very different. So in the case where Ksomim are seen, she observes a kesem on her body, then the Chaber is going to tell us that there is a difference between whether she sees it on her physical body or she sees it on her clothes. We're going to see that there's different shittas, different opinions as to the location, where it is found. Are we lenient if it's on the body, or are we lenient just if it's on a piece of clothing? What about if it's not on her body or her clothing? What if it's on her husband's pajamas? What then? In other words, can we use the same reasoning that we use all along for him too?
So what about?
Exactly, on the bed, on sdinim, on the sheets. And as we will eventually learn later on in the Siman, what happens if it's found on the toilet seat? Or, as the Halacha mentions, on a davar she'eino mekabel tuah, which Chazal, on an object that does not become tummy, which Chazal were also lenient for. And we will explain why they were lenient under those circumstances. So last time, we left off with the shear. And it was the premise for which a kesem is a problem, which poses a problem, is if there's a shear. So we're not necessarily talking right now about color. We're not necessarily talking yet about location. Right now we're concerned about the shear, because if we're going to be toile, as the Chachamim allowed us to be toile means to attribute, to assume that it's possible that it went to the source like in ma'acholet, like it allows, then in order for that to be a problem, it would have to have a kegris, an od. And we talked a little bit about the shear of a gris, which Mechaber says was like 9 lentils. Lentil is the size of 4 hairs. So as long as that this does not have that shear, we're saying it's a dam kina. It's very possible that it came from Elas, even though she may not have killed that day Elas. And we also said that it does not really depend on the shape and size, which we'll talk a little bit more later on. Okay, so this is important. One of the first conditions we therefore have for a ketem to be tomeh is it has to have the right size. If it doesn't have the right size, we're able to be toile. So far, so good. In Seif Bov, Mechaber makes the following differentiation. That which we said before that requires a shear, and without the shear you can be toile mekina, is ben beketem animtzal chaluko, ben beketem animtzal besara. As I said earlier, the Mechaber says that at least the first opinion of Mechaber is that it makes no difference whether this ketem was found on her chaluk, on her garment, on her gown, on her nightgown, that is, whatever she's wearing, or if it was found on her body, physical body, on her flesh. The Yesh Oimrim, and this Yesh Oimrim is the Rambam, that Shelo Omru Ela Bekesem Animtzal Chaluko, the leniency of the Chachomim was only in the kesem that is found on her clothing. Aval Kesem Animtzal Besora, if the kesem was found on her body, Bilvad, only on her body, Bimkomo Shechosheshin Lahem, in a place of her body where it is possibly came from the makor, came from, where the blood usually comes from. Ein lo shear, then even if it's a small stain, according to the Rambam, it would render her tmeya. Later on, we'll talk about what those places are. If it's a place, the bottom of her foot, or on her leg, or what about on her face, right? Depending on the part of the body, it would have to be a part of the body where it is possible that it came from the place where the dam comes from. If it's from a place, if it's on a spot on her body where it's impossible for the dam to have gotten there, then obviously we're not going to be concerned about that. In other words, you can't just blame any stain on her body. Oh, for sure it came from there. It could easily be some sort of injury, a petza, a wound. It could be something else. So, according to the Rambam, the second opinion of the Mechaber, if there is a ketem on her body, not on her clothes, as long as it's in one of those places that we can say it's possible that it came from her, which later on we'll see the list of those places, then it does not require a shear. Even if it's a small ketem less than the size of a dime or a penny, as I said before, it would be a problem. According to the Rambam, there are some who are machmir, like the Rambam, that this differentiation makes a difference in the shear, of course. Mechaber seems to be saying, because that's his first opinion, that no, it doesn't make a difference. Many times, whatever the Mechaber writes as the first opinion, for the most part, that's the way he holds. All right. So we have the Rishonim who bring this halacha for lenient as follows. We have the Raivet, the Ramban, and the Rashba. In other words, if you have that's the first opinion of the Mechaber. If you have less than a kegris, you can be lenient regardless of if it's on her body or on her garment. I think the Beis Yosef mentions also that the Rosh would hold like the Rambam. Let me see here. Yeah. What is that? The Beis Yosef and the Shach. That's the Dasa Rosh as well. Now, what's the reason for them? What's the reason for that opinion to be machmir on if it's on her basar? If you look at the Gemara, actually, if you read through the Gemara, it's actually mashma that since dam nidas does come from the body, it is easier to assume that this is from her body and not from somewhere else. But a better explanation of that is, it's not so clear, what the conclusion of the Gemara is, but some say that is what the Gemara intended. But in reality, the Metzias is that dam hakina, dam coming from hakina, is not it's not so common to see it on body. If you see it anywhere, it would be on some clothing. So when you see dam on her goof, on her body, then the chances are most likely that it came from her body. But if it were to be also on her body and also on clothing, then even the Rambam would be masking, would be moide. He would agree that she is clean. In other words, if it's less than a shah. I saw the Bach, the Chochmas Sodom, they're makel like the Mechaber's first opinion. The Shach is machmir. So there are some opinions that are machmir, but I'm almost sure that the vast majority of poskim tend to be makel, as it is in some stains that are derabbanan. So even though it's on her body, if it's less than a shear, we're not going to be mach. In other words, once the Chachamim made the Gzer, once they came up with the leniency applies in all situations, as we said last time, even if there are no kin in the house. So if that's the case, if it's pretty much a blank heter, right, a clear-cut heter, that you don't have to be machmir. Unless, of course, as the Crazy Flacy points out, there are times where it would be a ketem that is more of a serious ketem. She knows clearly it came from her body. She has no doubt about it. That's Crazy Flacy. Even that is not so partial because the others are makel on that too. In other words, the Chacham didn't make it such a clear distinction. She knows it came from the body or not. They did make a distinction on above the shear of a grease, depending on, because that is when we are concerned. As to where she found it, the color and so forth. Between the body or finding it on her garment, even though she knows where it came from, if it's less than a grease, there are some who are makel. The Crazy Place is machmir when she knows that it came from. Because then, if you know it's from there, then you cannot be toilet anymore. Okay. Anyway, so there are various opinions about this. And Sif Zayin, but actually before we go to Sif Zayin, there's an interesting discussion in the Poiskim of today, the Achronim. A woman that, let's say, she sees a kesem. All right, so it could be that it's unclean, it could be that it's clean. She has to ask a shaila, depending on, of course, the size, the color, and so forth. But should she check herself now? Now that she has discovered that there's a stain there, is that grounds for checking? After all, we have a klal that there are times that it's a good idea for a woman to call a yada marbe. We want the woman to check herself to make sure that she's, you don't want to overdo it, as we learned in the very beginning of Hilchos Niddah. You don't want the husband to be scared every time she checks herself. But would this be grounds for her to check herself? After all, there's something there. Maybe she's unclean. So what would you say? Should she check herself?
I think we need a strong, forceful argument. We don't.
Since there is this big machloek,
Yeah.
size,
Right.
I will those kind of.
Well, let me tell you this, that she finds it on colored clothing, which we'll learn eventually about. It's also a kesem that one can be lean. Colored clothing. It's colored. You can't really tell the real color unless it's on a white surface. Once the surface is colored, you can't really tell 100% for sure what the color of this thing is that you're looking at. So that is also grounds for leniency. Or a davar she'eino mekabel tuma. So this question, regardless of where it was found, in other words, even though you're going to be lenient, this ketem, and the ketem will not present itself as a problem, the question is, well, wait a minute, maybe she's unclean. So why don't she check herself? So some say she shouldn't, or she doesn't need, Yeah, right. She doesn't need to. Let's just say she doesn't really need to. Some say yes. Why not check? Be sure. Because if in fact she's unclean, she's unclean. In other words, do we tell her to do so? Do we encourage her to do so?
Well, she's not going to accept unless she finds it.
Right.
She checks. I need to be separate.
Yeah.
In other words, the fact that she didn't look and therefore didn't find it, it's not a desirable situation. Lose if she checks.
Yeah, that's exactly the question. But on the other hand, if you say that this ketem in itself is a Rabbanan, then perhaps just forget about the whole thing.
But we're looking at it now as a symptom and not a
But maybe the ketem was fine.
Because remember, if the kesem is
There is a downside.
if the kesem is a serious ketem and she checks herself and she's clean, she's still tameya, right?
because it's a symptom.
Yeah, because maybe the inside is dry by now. It was just we covered that before too. Just because you checked yourself and you didn't find anything, but she felt, remember the Truma Sadeshan? She felt her body open up, something coming through her. Even though she checks, she doesn't see it. She's still Tmei, according to him, according to some opinions. In this case, she saw blood, right? And then she checked herself and it's inside, internally is clean. Well, it could be dried up. So the question is the blood that she's seeing dam machmas tashmish? Was it right after tashmish? Was it right after she? Right. Was it? No. But it could be that it's, it would be metame her. Seeing dam after tashmish or seeing dam after going to the bathroom. So after going to the bathroom, we had a machlokes, that some say it's not normal for a woman to see dam after going to the bathroom. So it's not, in other words, we're not necessarily going to attribute it, whatever dam she does see at that point, that it came from there and she just didn't notice it or realize it that she had a rigosha. So that in itself is a machlokes. Dam after tashmish is a more serious problem. There's quite a few halachas about that. But now the question is, does she need to check herself, or should she? So some say yes and some say no. The one case where she should check herself for sure, if this is the time when she ordinarily expects to see her period. Because this could be the beginning of her period.
Well, right now I don't understand. We're talking all the time about her garments and so on and so on. When we were talking about that as a general topic, were we she would normally have her period?
No. This is a kesem out of the blue.
Yeah. That's all along when we're talking about the shear of the blood, that it's like this and that on the garment.
That's correct.
We're talking out of...
Right. All of a sudden she sees a ketem, she's not expecting her period.
So that was the topic in C5, C5, that was all along the topic that I thought.
That's correct, yeah. In other words, all of a sudden she sees dam, No.
So we go via a sheet and so on, and now we're going to say that she...
This is not her regular period, so she's not expecting it.
But this was all
she doesn't have to separate from her husband, that's correct.
So we were conveying a shear of blood that since it's not her period, she will not tummy. Why discuss a shear?
Wait a minute, it's not your blood, it's ketem.
Of the ketem only. Right. Here, the Mechaber started off Siman Kuf Tzadik by telling us a little bit of how Isha becomes Tamir, and then he tells us, oh, by the way, the Chachomim were goizer on the ketem, Shenimtza Begufa, or Yore Deah, she Tmei of Asura. Yeah, just the ketem.
And now this ketem she's seeing out of the blue. We're talking all along about the ketem.
Right.
And she paid, she thought, and she Zion, we're talking
the entire
about
Siman.
the ketem.
The entire Siman, yeah.
And this ketem she's seeing.
Yes.
And since she's seeing it out of the blue, she's not Tam.
She may be Tmei, and Asura to her
but
husband.
This doesn't make her Tam, the fact that she's seeing the blue. It's not her time for it.
Yeah, but the Chachomim were goizer.
So it does make her Tam.
It doesn't make her Tam.
It does not, or it does?
It does, sure.
So if it doesn't make her Tam,
if it has the requirements, in other words,
at the right place and the right size,
the color and so forth. Yeah.
So what was the?
So right now,
whether she should tell.
She sees a ketem, okay, and the ketem does not have the shear.
Does not have the
shear. She's not tmeya. She's not tmeya by the ketem. She's not tmeya.
In other words, it doesn't have the shear, therefore she's not tmeya.
Yeah, she's not tmeya. I mean, she's tmeya. Why does she need to check herself? She's tmeya.
That would be my question exactly. So it doesn't have the shear that would make tmeya.
Right, exactly. No, well, she finds a kesem. Let's clarify it. Pochos mike gris. Maybe I didn't say it. So that led to your question. Yeah. Well, it's a stain. Well, why worry about it? It's pochos mikigris.
So in other words, now the question becomes, this ketem cannot make meya because it have the right shear.
Right.
Does it nonetheless cause her to have to check herself?
Yeah, do we tell her check yourself? Is that a good idea for her to check herself? Does she need to check herself? Some say yes, some say not. Because in the end we're makel with something, so do we have to we have to make her go to the Baba to check herself. But if it's her period, then I think it's brought down by the shiur of the Shevet HaLevi that she should check herself. Since that's the time that she's expecting her period, he brings down there that she should check herself just in case that's the onset of her period. Then there's a situation where a woman sometimes cleans herself there. She sees blood on the cloth that she's cleaning herself. What's the halacha? What's the din of that dam or any dam that she sees on the cloth? That also will make a difference whether she was internal, was it more inside of her or was it outside of her? If it was inside, as we said various times, it's definitely a problem. If it's externally, she was just cleaning herself externally, then it's a form of ketem that she sees.
What is the problem? Are we talking about less than the shear?
No, even if it's less than the shear, because it's an internal exam, that there's no shear. It's there. She's actually seeing the blood inside where it's tummy.
So seeing the blood, she's actually seeing whatever she
on the cloth that she uses inside. But if she's externally cleaning herself, as people do after a bathroom and so on, and it was completely external, even though it's around that area, I believe the majority of the poskim are, even though some are machmir, the majority are to treat it as a ketem. There was not necessarily coming from there, from inside.
And we're all still talking about less shear.
Exactly.
If it wasn't the shear, then like any ketem.
Sure, definitely.
She didn't shear.
That's correct. Yeah. She just discovered it. In the morning she got up and she sees a ketem that is gris ve'od, and it meets all the other requirements. Alright, so with cleaning herself, if it's external, on the outside of that place, one can be lenient. Okay, Siv Zayin. What is that? Yeah, Siv Zayin, yeah. Okay, so now, we've been talking about till now on the shear of a Kegris Ve'od, because of the potential for her smashing a louse. What happens in Horgo Pishpesh? She knows that she killed a bed bug, which is bigger. Or Hericha Recho, or she smelled the odor of this bed bug. Yes, there are some bugs that when they are killed, they emit some sort of odor once they're killed. So she doesn't recall killing one, but she can smell it. Either way, toilaba, then she could rely on that. So even though we have a stain that's larger than a gris ve'od, since she knows she killed the pishpesh, or she senses the odor, toilaba ad ke turmos, until the size of a turmos, which we said is a kind of legume that's called lupin. Lupinus, I forget what it's called, something like that. Now, we're not exactly experts to determine the real size of that today. So every situation would have to be treated separately, individually. It would have to be that the place is full of bed bugs for it to matter. There's an interesting Taz here. The Taz brings down here like this. Taz brings down the Rashba, that if she did not kill a pishpesh, he says like this. First he brings down the Rosh. Zeloshen arosh heavy beis Yosef, avad mistam lo talina b'mishum de lo shchiach. Now with stam, we don't assume that she killed the pishpesh. Mashma, what's understood from that is the b'mekoymas ashchichim, that if this is a place, she lives in a place where these kind of bedbugs are common, talina behu, kemo b'macholet, that you can actually attribute it to the bedbug, just like you would attribute it to a louse, the same cause of a rashba behedya. So in other words, the rashba holds that you would be able to attribute it to a bedbug, especially in a place which is known. It is quite common to see these kind of bugs. In other words, first he quotes the Rosh. You're not going to just attribute it to a fish. Oh, it could have been a bedbug, because it sees something bigger than a dime or a penny. Well, maybe this bed bug produces more blood. Stam, we don't say that. But if it's quite common, the mekomis ashchichim, let's say this is a trop. Yeah. He also says that the Rashba agrees to this. The mekomis ashchichim.
It's also the Rosh. It's a good thing.
No, the Taz is saying that. The Taz is saying mashma, that since the Rosh says that stama, you don't say that it could have been a pishpish, could have been something else. So why don't you say it was a mouse? You don't say it could have been something else that produces blood. We have that leniency legabe ma'acholet, kina, louse. But mashma, the Taz says the b'mekoymus hashchichim, that if this is she lives in a place, I don't know, maybe some tropical country, or in the jungle. If it's a makom sheshchichim, these kind of bugs are common. Talina behu. Then you could say, what? It could have been this ma'acholet. It could have been this pishpesh, just like we're talina b'ma'acholet. So he says, v'chein kosav arashba behedya. But that
would mean, just to follow on from your example, being such a mouse, but if mice are very common in an area, or something else is common, why don't we attribute that if see such an animal dead, had to go that far? Beyond bugs to
so the Taz goes on to say that it's not clear if everybody would hold like that. So like this, in other words, the Rashba is very lenient. The Divra Rosh Mevurin Ken Efi Pshutan Mashmausan, if they're common, you can attribute it to them. And since in Ksomim we follow the more lenient opinion, if they really are very common, you can be lenient and attribute it to them. Right? So he goes through the various opinions whether we can be lenient or not in that kind of a situation. But the Halacha L'maisa, in conclusion, he says that since we go after the more lenient opinion in Ksomim, that if it's very common, you can attribute it to Pishkim, like the Rashba says. That's pretty much that. As I said before, today not everybody is such an expert to know the size or to know how much blood a pishpesh would produce. I mean, you would have to maybe figure this out. Kill some bed bugs. Yeah. But the main criteria here is it common or not? Yeah. How do you know they're not common? Yeah. In some places they're pretty common. Yeah.
Could you rely upon this when we were dealing with
Right.
Could we rely upon a professional in that type of?
Well, I mean, the woman would have to know.
No, this heter only works if it's common in the area.
Right, but she
has to say that I saw it, I killed it, whatever. But it
right.
only works there.
I smelled it. Right. And then, no, in the case...
If it's uncommon in the area, if she says it's from that, because this heter doesn't work.
One more time, that what?
If the bug is on the area.
Right.
That area is the Arctic, there are no bed bugs.
Right.
Whatever, okay?
Right.
And this heter would not work.
The heter that she said.
And she killed it, and that's what caused all the blood. Can we rely upon it as to whether this bug is...
Okay, so let me clarify again. What the Mechaber said is very clear. She killed it, she smelled it, regardless of what everybody else says. Whether they exist or not in abundance doesn't matter, right? She killed it, she smells it. What the Taz was bringing down here, based on what the Rosh says and what the Rashba says, that it is apparent that even if she did not kill it, but it's shchiach, it's a makoimesh shchiach. Because the Rosh said stam, I mean, it's understood from the Rosh that stam, we don't say pishpesh, we don't use pishpesh as a basis, right? Yeah, as an excuse. But what if it's a place that is shchiach?
It's common.
It's quite common. That's what the Taz says, that the Rashba would say, go ahead, and you can rely on that, like we would be relying on a machonet.
Instead of her personal encounter, one would be sufficient to attribute the Sedeta.
Yeah, so if we knew somehow the size, that maybe an expert opinion can help us with that, then it would be definitely something that can help us resolve the status of the stain. Yeah.
We had this even with the chef.
Sure. Yeah. Just all I said before is that from what I've seen on this, what the poets can write on this, is that today nobody's really an expert on the size of a macholet, the dam that's produced by a macholet, because it's not common and it's not something that we encounter. But if it was necessary for us to figure out, I think an expert opinion could help, especially in a place where it's shachiach. Yeah, it appears to be.
Well, the place where it's not shachiach, it's not shachiach.
Because we wouldn't rely on it. That's right. All right, we can go on a little bit more. Sif ches. Sif ches and tes are pretty straightforward. Let's say you find a stain, but you don't. It's not one stain. It's a bunch of little stains. It's a bunch of little spots, dots. So in one place you don't have in the stain kigris ve'od. Even though you have various spots, various dots that are close to each other, but they're not contiguous. Is that the right word? Contiguous. Right?
Contiguous with the...
Yeah. They're all close to each other, but it's spotting. But if you combine them all together, they would be more than gris. Tehoira. She's still clean. We attribute every one of those tipa to a kina until the gris or ve'od is actually one spot. Yesh oimrim, however, and this is an important yesh oimrim, there are some of the opinion, the hanemilek shenimtzu al chaluka. That's, you only say this leniency of spots that are not combined to form the shear when it's found on her garment. But if you find it on her body, she sees it on a place of her body, that would be a problem. She sees a lot of red stains that each one of them is small, but together they form the shear of gris ve'od. Then yesh omrim that would be a problem. Because even though it's not,
you're not metzaref,
that you are metzaref, according to the yesh omrim. Yesh omrim says you would be metzaref all the little dots into one if it's on her basar, on her body. This is the second opinion. Yeah, there's actually quite a few who hold like that. Yeah.
Now, bed bugs don't love on the body?
Well, that's what we said before.
Bed bugs love those?
That was a machlokes in Sivav, right? In Sivav, the Mechaber brought down Yesh Oimrim, that they only said the leniency of a kesem on her garment, but not on her basar. But the Mechaber's first opinion is that it makes no difference.
So now that we're in the test, we'll change.
Now,
right. On the Basar, it would be going to those that there is no leniency.
Right. But very good. So this is a different kind of machlokes, right? Here, if it's on her basar, there are some who are machmir here that you do combine them. Let me see if I can find it here. Yeah, quite a few Rishonim who hold like that. Brings down here the Tur, Kinkos of Arashba. Yeah. And again, this is all based on how you learn the Gemara. So now, what would be the svara to differentiate basar and beged? Why should there be a difference? The simple svara is because it's more, more likely that the killing of a louse would stain her clothes than for that to have happened on her body. In other words, the killing of a bug by sleeping on it, by laying on it, is more shaya, something that happens more frequently than the other way around, that she somehow laid on it without any...
Don't bed bugs don't they die?
Well, they don't go...
Blood or something?
That would be the mosquitoes in Africa.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that they go through, but...
Bugs don't?
No, not that I know of. I mean, I guess a spider, it could get to certain parts of your body that are exposed, but here we're talking about the general scenario of having squished a bug. Usually that happens, in other words, when she's either laying down or sitting down, and what's affected is her clothing. For the body to be stained as a result of having sat or squished a bug is not the typical. Right, exactly.
Oh, for you.
Yes.
Cornell University.
Okay.
What do the bugs live off? Only blood like mosquitoes, fur, blood of people.
Okay.
But that's we still assume that she's wearing clothes when she goes to bed doing something.
But the bed bug to get to her clothes would go on the dress.
Yeah.
This is a...
Yeah, but first of all, remember, we haven't really spoken about bed bugs for the most part. We were talking about mostly louse.
Well, lice certainly on the
Okay.
Even so, this is great help.
Yeah, no, we're talking about this.
But lice are certain.
Because even
Not really.
Beneath the arm, hairy parts of you.
Yeah, right.
we want to use this to keep something and not on the body, regardless of what they find.
One more time, though.
We want to keep our tahor.
Right.
So they have to say, even though these things may live on humans, they were killed by the clothing
Well,
and not from her.
Well, that's what the poskim say, that the mitzad svara, that's what most likely happened. That's what usually happens. In other words, if we have to analyze a situation and say, well, is it possible? Yes, it's possible that she sat on it, she squished it with her clothing, but for it to have come onto her body is not so typical. That's all, Could it happen? Yes, of course, but it's not so typical. So, according to the first opinion in the Mechaber and Siv Vav, that's why it makes no difference where you find it, right? Here in Siv Ches, it's a different situation. We're trying to be metzaref, or we're trying to determine if we're going to be metzaref the various tipping. Here, we're going to take it much more seriously because we do really have the shear. But we were extra lenient that if it's not contiguous, let it go. It could be that every one of those tipa is a kina, right? Now think about it. Ilan is right. You can get a kina anywhere on your body too. But to get many kinan on your body versus many kinim on that garment, it's more likely that the garment, got stained various times with various kinim, as opposed to the body getting stained spot by spot. It's just not so typical. So in the second example, in Halacha Ches, Yesh Oimrim, Dehane Milik Shenimtza al Chalukah, but Nimtza Basar, they are going to be mitzaref bekikris ve'ori, because it's just not typical. For you to find so many spots, it's more likely that it came from her. It just, it came out that way. So that's mitzad svara. It doesn't really make sense to say that it was a kina or kinim, I should say. Whereas it's, yeah.
Bed bugs poop out blood spots.
What is that?
You don't have to have a bed bug, blood spot.
Yeah.
If it poops, it eats blood.
It eats blood. It could.
So whenever it behind a stain like a blood spot.
Right.
Because that's all it eats.
Yeah. That could be. Yeah. Yeah. So that's with the bed bug. So. All right. Anyway, does it say the size? What's the quarter of an inch? The bed bug? Yeah, but how much blood does it produce? Yeah, that you have to figure out. You have to kill one.
Feed only on blood. When people are stopped, call that a meal.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, so that's why in Siv Ches you would have a different situation than Siv Vav, because in Siv Ches you actually have various tipping, and altogether they do form a shear. So in this kind of a situation, some would be machmir, whereas in Siv Ches they're not. If it's less than, what was Siv Ches? What was Siv Vav? Siv Vav was that if it's less than a shear, I'm not going to make a distinction whether it's on her body or it's on her beged. It's less than a shear. Okay. In other words, the kul of the Chachamim was anywhere. In Siv Ches, however, you do have a shear, it's just not contiguous. You have tiptim. The question is if you're a mitzvah of them. So here, it's the svara, mitzvah svara. You say, for that to have been produced by many kinim is not typical. On a garment, yes, it could happen, that it happened over time. And she never, Sometimes a woman doesn't check, doesn't notice it the first time around. It could be it was used time after time, and it accumulated over a certain amount of days. All right, Sif Tes. In Sif Tes, we're going to talk about a little bit about the shape. We know about the shear now. What happens if ketem nimtza besoro shu oruch kiretzua or agol? It is long like a stripe, or it's round, or shayut tipin, or it's in the shape of many dots, or shaya orecha ketem al rochav yerecha, or the length of the ketem was on the width of her leg. It was not going down directly, because when somebody bleeds, especially for that area, so it may go usually in one direction, but here you're finding like a horizontal line of blood down her leg. Or if it appears that it's dripping from bottom up instead of from top to bottom. All of these don't make a difference, because ho'il v'hu keneged beis torfo, since it is more or less below the area where the blood usually comes out from, the menstruation cycle, tmeya, she's unclean, ve'ein omlim ilu notaf min haguf lo haya kaseh. And we don't say, had it really come from within her body, it would not have been in this shape. So the main chidush in this seif is that it makes no difference in what shape you find the kesem. We will metame it if it has the shear. Now, I said that we're metamet if it has the shear, but the reality is that even if it does not have the shear, according to the second opinion, since it's al gabe besoro, right, since this is on her body, on her flesh, not on her garment, then according to the second opinion, even if it's less than a shear, it would be a problem. And there are some who are machmir like that, so that's why it's important to talk about the various sheet here. Anyway, we will see later on that it is important where the actual stain is found. It's not just anywhere in the body, but here we're talking about beneath or around the area of where it could have come from. The chiddush is that regardless of the shape, we would be metamet if it has the shear, according to those who require shear, and according to those who say a shear is not important, if it's al besora, it would be a problem. Again, the mechaber's opinion is that it makes no difference where it is, either way you would need it. Okay, I think we can stop here. The next seif is going to be an interesting seif, which deals with another leniency that the Chachamim introduced here with Ksamim, and that is kesem that was found al dover she'eno mekabel tuma. So we'll be talking about tissues, toilet paper, the actual toilets, the ground, anything that's not mekabel tuma. And it's interesting why the Chachamim were goizer that if it's not mekabel tuma, it's not a problem. If you think about it, it's simple. The one explanation is that since that object is not mekabel tuma, why should the woman be? See what I mean? Once we say this is exempt, and to begin with, the whole idea of ksamim was because of Tuma and Tara. So here we say it doesn't affect this object, even though Tuma and Tara is gone, and it used to affect the woman too, but Tuma and Tara is gone. Now, why should the woman now be affected by this? Yeah, no. That's the sfor behind. In other words, that is one of the conditions for a kesem not to be metamet, is that if it is found, even with the shear, on the davar she'eno mekabel tuma, or colored clothing, as we will see, regardless of the size, it would also be tohar. We'll talk about that next time.